Hello, and welcome to Raising the Bar with the MBBA. I'm your co-host, Adiola Adejobi.
And I'm Jason Clark, president of the Metropolitan Black Bar Association. The MBBA is the largest association of predominantly African-American attorneys in New York. Our goal is to advance equality in the pursuit of justice, assist in the professional development of our members, and address legal issues affecting New Yorkers.
The goal of Raising the Bar with the MBBA is to foster a substantive conversation about justice issues in our community and to try to identify a couple of solutions in the process.
Today, we are going to discuss how to protect yourself online. Joining us now is Lawrence Montel, Chief Information Security and Privacy Officer at the New York State Insurance Fund. Welcome, and let's get to it. Just as the title of today's show is, I think what people want to know is how they can protect themselves online. So what are some things that most folks should be doing to be able to protect themselves?
One thing is to really be careful with your email. In the past, email was an optional thing, but now people file their taxes via email. They use email to communicate with friends, neighbors, and so forth. So I think that being able to having an awareness of protecting your email is a critical function. If your email account starts having odd things in it, for example, you see messages disappearing or you see something that you don't expect, then that's the time to go and check on it. Don't let it wait. It's kind of like a leaky faucet in your kitchen. If you leave it alone and go on vacation, you'll come back, you'll just have a bigger problem. The issues just won't go away. Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking about email, I imagine when some people may think, like, does that mean I have to change my email, or someone may have gotten that information, or what are some things that I could be doing maybe today to make sure that I'm careful with my personal information?
Sure. For email, one thing you can do is you can verify that your email has not been compromised. When you get emails on occasion, there are all types of hackers and spammers and so forth out there. What some of them will do is they will take over an email and they will look for keywords. For example, if Jason, your email was hacked, then if I send you, I'm your friend, I send you an email and say, hey, Jason, your email was hacked, the hackers will delete that email. You won't even get it. So if you regularly correspond with people and you realize you haven't been receiving any messages from them, it could be because they're telling you, hey, you've got a problem. And the hackers have been redirecting or rerouting your email. So a lot of times, I know it's not so common to do this today, but pick up the phone, right? A phone is not just for email and web browsing. Call people and let them know that they may have a problem, because your support network, your friends, the people that you correspond with, they can be a great source of help for you in determining whether you have a problem with your email.
Now, if that happens to you and someone says, I sent you this email 5 times and you're telling me that you did not receive it, how does that person rectify that problem? They just change their password? Like, what happens there?
So it depends on what type of email, but you would look to change your password, but the idea would be, it could be that you need to just change your password, but the other question would be, what else are you using that email for? Some people use their email for their taxes, for example. So therefore, that has alerted you to the potential or possibility of having other problems. If you're using your taxes to file with the IRS, to file your taxes with the IRS, and you find out that's been compromised, then you better look back to see how long it's been compromised. Do I have a bigger problem here? Or is it just this one thing? If it's something small, you can change the password. In some cases, you might want to create a whole new email account, depending upon what has happened with that email.
Right, and then a follow-up question to that is, let's say someone's checking their email and they receive inbound spam, right? So someone else's account was hacked, and then you get a link thinking that it's a link from someone that you know, and you have now clicked on spam and you realize it. Do you now need to protect your account and change your passwords? Like, how does that affect that person's account?
So first, we go back, you call the person who, particularly if it's a friend, you call them and tell them, hey, I got spam from you. And they'll say, oh, I didn't mean to, or delete it, or what have you. The other thing would probably be to run a virus scan on your computer, because part of spam could be to load a virus or some sort of malware on your computer. And the other thing that you probably would want to do is you'd want to before you click on things, I know we've already gone past that, but hopefully some of the folks hearing this will be able to prevent future problems, because that's kind of the goal, is you want to take your mouse and you want to hover over any link. That means move the mouse, the pointer, over that link, over the hyperlink, and then that will tell you where you're going to go. For example, both of you ride buses, right?
Sure.
If you're going to go somewhere, would you get on the generic bus, the bus that doesn't have an address to it? Of course not, right? That is equivalent to blindly clicking on a link. You should always look to see where you're going to go, and then that will reduce tremendously the risk of just clicking.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then also there's something called the VPN,
right?
Correct. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and whether it actually protects people's emails?
Sure. VPN stands for Virtual Private Network, and a virtual private network does not specifically protect emails. A virtual private network is like a tunnel from one point to another. What goes inside the tunnel is not affected, and if you send email to someone else, that's not affected by the VPN of Virtual Private Network. In addition to that, NordVPN, which is a really popular one that came out recently, it was hacked.
Oh, wow.
So the big picture, unfortunately, is there is nothing that's guaranteed unbreakable. So you need to take regular precautions just like you would in the physical world. Don't have people that you don't know walk into your house. Don't, if it's an email from someone that you don't know, be suspicious of it. Hover your mouse over links so that you know whether it's going to be problematic before you go there. Try to visit sites that you're comfortable with. Try not to have farming used on you. What farming is a commonly used website. The idea is that if you see that website and you click on it, it's supposed to bring you here. If it doesn't bring you here, if it was redirecting you somewhere else, that is farming. That's where they're grabbing people and they're taking them somewhere they don't want to be. They are farming their locations and reshifting or reshuffling them.
And actually, and to that point, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that for most websites, if you actually go to the corner of where the actual website comes in, there's supposed to be a padlock or some type of certification that proves that a website exactly is what it is. Is that true, or is that?
That's kind of true. So it's called a trust mark. And having the padlock is better than not having a padlock. However, hackers these days can put, just like you can put anything else, they can fake a padlock. So it is better than not having anything, but it is not something that you should bet your pension on.
Got it.
Right?
Right, and so does the antivirus software actually help? I mean, I feel like it was big in the 90s, and I feel like I haven't seen as much of it now, but does that really protect people's information and accounts?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, antiviruses pick up about 40% of viruses. However,
it's not very assuring.
However, 40% of malware is a lot better than zero, right? Most people will use either Apple or Microsoft. Apple has fewer viruses built in that people have targeted towards it because it's a less commonly used platform. Microsoft has lots and lots of viruses targeted towards it just because it's more popular. Microsoft has a built-in antivirus, which in some cases might be a better call, not because it's phenomenally successful, but because it's updated as part of Windows. If you have some of the other antiviruses which come with your system, and then after a year or so they give you that nag warning saying, hey, you have to pay, hey, you have to pay, most people don't pay. So they think they have an antivirus, but they don't. So the built-in one with Windows is definitely sufficient for most people just because it's updated. It's better to have a current and updated antivirus than to have a really, really expensive out-of-date antivirus.
So tell us a little bit about phishing, what phishing is, especially on that topic when we're talking about emails, and what to do if you click on one of those emails. I mean, are you complete? Now, are you wholly vulnerable? Are there things that you can do once you feel like you've been phished in some type of way? If that's the way that actually works.
Yeah, that's exactly the word. So there's phishing, spear phishing, and whaling. So phishing, just because tech people want to make our own words up.
A lot of people on boats. Yeah.
Right.
Instead of F, it starts with a PH. But the idea is phishing is when people send out a mass email and they hope that somebody will click on it. They just throw the net out there and hope they catch someone. Spear phishing is when they target somebody. They say, okay, Abiola, let me try to send you an email. And Jason, your position as the head of an organization, that would be whaling, because you're the big, high value target. So they'll spend a lot more effort and energy to try to get you, because if they can get you and hack your email, then everybody who works for you, everybody who's under you, will then be subject to attacks. So if you do happen to click on something, the first thing to do would be to figure out, to look at your computer and see what has happened, right? It's not a good idea to just turn your computer off. Some people, they say, oh, I've been phished, I'll just turn it off. That's not the best option.
Why is that?
Because you want to know what's happening. Because at some point you're going to turn that computer back on.
Right.
So you haven't stopped anything.
Right. So just so we're clear, if you turn your computer off, the actions are still happening virtually, or it's just going to start back up when you turn your computer on.
It'll start back up when you turn the computer on.
Okay.
So being in the moment, working on the problem in the moment, is much better than procrastinating or saying, I'll get back to it later, because in the moment you know what you clicked, and hopefully you can see, okay, let me make sure I run my antivirus now, for example, or something like that. Or if you click, then you can see whether your friends are going to start getting spam emails. Because that would be one of the ways that with phishing, then they take over your email, and then shortly thereafter, the hackers get access to your email address book, and then everyone that you know, the hackers know.
Right.
We're all a big family once that happens.
Right.
And so a lot of companies have been talking about updating their cookies policies, or you have to agree, or they ask you to agree to their cookies. What exactly does that mean for an individual that's on that website?
Okay, so cookies are a small piece of software which sits on your computer. And what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to retain the history of what has happened. And it's supposed to make life easier for you. If they ask you to accept their cookies, then they're asking you to allow them to hold a piece of software on your computer, supposedly to make it easier for you. There are super cookies. What that means is that one company will put a cookie on your computer which reads other people's websites. That's not necessarily for your benefit. But generally, with online access, they're looking at something called consent. And in order to have consent, generally you need informed consent. Just saying yes to things that you don't know what you're agreeing to is not ideal. So what is supposed to happen in privacy circles is you're supposed to be able to give informed consent. They have to explain to you what the cookies are, and then you have to consent to them with knowledge. Outside of the US, privacy is a very different world. And in that case, they say that you have the option to use the website without using the cookies. In the US, most websites say, if you're going to use our website, you're going to be using cookies. You're going to accept our cookies, and that's just the way it is. That may be changing now, but privacy laws are kind of up in the air.
Right, and then a follow-up to that is, when you're on websites now and use payment information, like Amazon, PayPal, all those places, right, a lot of times they will ask you to save your card information. Is that something that people should not be doing based on a lot of these data breaches, or does it make a difference? Okay.
It does make a difference. There's something called the PCI, the Payment Card Industry System of the different payment cards they got together and they decided these are the protections that you should use. However, that's not a law. It's an agreement of payment card providers, and they would enforce by suing each other. So the point is, you should not save your credit card anywhere online unless you feel 100% comfortable with that company, because that means that somebody else can get access to it and you don't necessarily know when. Credit cards are generally not as valuable or as critical to people as using a debit card. Some debit cards have a credit card number. Credit card, the amount you can lose with a credit card in some cases $50, in some cases a little more. With your debit card, they can take money from your bank account and your rent check may bounce. So if you're going to shop online, then I would recommend either using a credit card. If you don't have a credit card, maybe a prepaid credit card, something like that. But I'd recommend against using your debit card with the credit card, with that credit card option, because that can hit your bank account directly, and then sorting that out could be much more unpleasant.
Right.
And sorry, one more question on this line right here. Just, so you talked about that online, but what about like on your computer? Like now a lot of computers are like, they'll automatically save your password. Is that something that people should be, because like now for an Apple, you can use your fingerprint and it will automatically fill some of your passwords and for your bank accounts and things like that. Should people be doing that?
It depends on whether your passwords are complex. It is better to have saved passwords that are good than non-saved passwords, which are very simple. I highly recommend against people using passwords based upon publicly available information. Your first initial, your birthday, anything I can look up online about you, because if I get to the spear phishing stage, then I'm going to look up all the information I can find out about you, particularly your middle name, where you went to school, because those are also things that when you go to log in somewhere else, they say, oh, where's your first school? What was your first car? That sort of thing. Exactly. Exactly. And it's hard to know when some of that information was compromised. So if you presume that that information is already available online, then that can drive you, or should drive you, to create better passwords. The best password you can get are something that you cannot find out about you online.
So when and maybe I think we're starting to go this way, but let's say, for example, I have an email address and then someone gives me a call and says, hey, you sent me this email, did this really come from you? And you tell them no, and you start hearing that somehow your emails are going out to folks, asking for money or doing something that's clearly not coming from you. What are the specific things that someone can do when that happens to them?
Well, unfortunately, you probably want to use a different email address at that point, because in the example of an attorney, then your email carries a lot more weight than some other folks. You could be, changing court. You could be doing some very significant things based upon your email, doing a closing. There was a case where an attorney's email was hacked and the person's money for that closing went to somebody in China, based upon the attorney's email. So if in the case of your email being hacked, one option is to change the password, but if that person it depends on how big or how widespread the problem is. I think that just like anything else, you should determine or try to determine how big or how bad the problem is. If it's going out to 2 or 3 people, that's one thing. Maybe call a few people that you normally email and say, hey, did you get a weird email from me?
Like, yeah, I just sent you some money on a gift card.
Exactly. So there's that. Now, the phishing, as far as incoming, there is no one set way to stop everything, but one of the things you can look for is misspellings, if there are misspellings, or if they address you by your email address versus your name. Your friends know who you are,
Right.
so they won't be addressing you by your email address. You absolutely have not won a lottery in a foreign country, so you can just forget about that.
Especially if you never got a lottery ticket.
Precisely, that didn't happen. Also, you want to make sure that they're not trying to pressure you into acting quickly. That's something that has gone on for a long time, where people will try to scam you by pressuring you to say, if you don't act right now, then you'll lose access to your account, or you're going to face penalties, or something is going to happen. And generally, when you rush people, that's where things go bad. You don't have the time to make the decision, or you don't fully read what you're about to do. So the the odd thing about that is that people have been trying to steal money forever. Supposedly one of the oldest professions is locksmith, right? So the reason it'd be an old profession is because prior to, people said, well, I better lock this up.
Right.
So thievery is not new. There are a few new wrinkles, but most of the way that people steal can absolutely be traced back to, the physical world, trying to either break into things or trying to trick you. Those concepts and the same lack of trust or the same ways that you address people in the real world, you should have the same amount of trepidation, the same amount of concern when dealing with people online.
So a lot of times, and this is a little bit of a side issue, but I think a lot of times people are trying to be careful of their conversations that they have with folks. And today it seems like there are a litany of different apps out there that people can use, whether it's WhatsApp or if it's GroupMe or if it's Signal or what have you. I think that for most people, they see that it says encrypted and they think that that's safe. Can you talk a little bit about what that means and whether or not people's information is safe?
Sure, and that goes back to our question earlier about a VPN. Encryption is supposed to be a tunnel between one point and another point. It's supposed to take, if someone sees that information in transit, it's not supposed to be readable, it's supposed to be gibberish. The challenge is that encryption has a key. If someone gets access to that key, then it's no longer encrypted. And it depends on who or how the encrypted message is supposed to be managed. If I have the key, then your information is not encrypted. There are there's some push from some government agencies to say we want to have a backdoor into encryption. Whether that's good or bad, I'm not going to speak on, but that's kind of the way things are. And most encrypted communications, or at least previously, have had an incident or two. And if you were a journalist in a war zone sending some information out, then, and your life depended upon it, then that would be a really tricky thing to be concerned with.
Now, in terms of data breaches, what happens? So let's say someone receives an email from a company. A lot of banks and large organizations these days, Target, et cetera, you name them, they've had data breaches. How can an individual protect themselves after a data breach like that?
Well, there's actually nothing you can personally do. Mm-hmm. You can verify what access or what information they had. If it was just a credit card, then maybe you're getting off light. If they had more information, like for example, I think it was Target, they had information about an individual, a young lady. They had a lot of information about her. Eventually they sent her an email, and it got to her parents, that congratulations on your pregnancy, right? She hadn't told her parents of this. They had analyzed the data that they had about her, and they had determined that was the situation, and they sent the email to her parents. It was a big fluff, and in actuality, it turned out that, oh yeah, she did have to tell her parents. So the reason I'm saying that is that there's a lot of information out there, so depending upon whether you have, say, a loyalty card, if you have a Dwayne Reed card, for example, or any other loyalty card, then they know all the meds you've taken, everything that you've picked up in the last who knows how long. So that's very different than a store where you only just pay in with a credit card and step back.
Right. And then in addition to that, like now we're in the digital age, everyone's using their phones everywhere. Right. Everyone's posting on Instagram where they're at or Facebook where they're at, using Google and things like that. Are there breaches that can happen into people's phones where that data can be collected?
Sure. The information in a phone is generally accessible by apps that are in the phone. Okay. Unfortunately, most people probably don't read all the fine print that's in an app. And I mean, in law school, I spoke to a group of 30 students. None of them read Facebook's terms and conditions. They all use it, but none of them read it. So
It's long. I'm just saying.
it is. I agree with you. I agree with you. But I mean, I just use that as an example because we're talking about future attorneys. So I have no expectation that non-attorneys are actually going to even read this stuff. But there are some, hopefully, red flags of the different apps that will say we need to use, if it's an app for weather and it says we need to use your camera, then the question, well, wait a minute, why, I want to know what the weather is, why is it you want to see, you need my camera? So the different types of access that they use will indicate what type of data they're going to collect. And even if you don't read all the fine print, it's a question of what is it that they're doing, what else are they doing? Because a lot of apps will also collect information and send information to places that you may not have wanted them to, but have agreed to by loading or clicking.
Got it.
And this is a little bit of a nuanced question, and you may not know the answer to this, but it made me think when you were talking about the camera component, right? Because there are certain apps where there may be a legitimate reason if you're taking pictures or what have you, right? Is there some type of watchdog group or some type of exchange which will tell you if there are certain apps that are out there that are faulty or fraudulent or misusing your information in some type of way?
Not exactly. There are plenty of blogs that will report on something. Mm-hmm. However, there's no commercial or organized group, possibly because that organization would probably be disliked by the app creators. So if you put in your app, if you Google your app and say hacks, breaches, bad things, something like that, then there are other people out there in the world who've probably looked at this, and that might be a way to check it out. But I don't know of any centralized place to talk about all the apps.
Right.
Yes, and I mean, that's a great way to end the show. I mean, there's just so much more here that we did not get to cover, so hopefully we'll have to have you back to talk about it some more.
I'm happy to.
But we want to thank you all for watching Raising the Bar with the NBBA on the Manhattan Neighborhood Network. See you next time.
Bye.